Welcome, and thank you for taking the time to learn about the OceanWatch Education Kit, Átl'ța7tsem Txwnéwu7ts Howe Sound Edition. This tutorial video will outline the 4 components included in this education kit and explain how these components can be used together to create a comprehensive and easy-to-implement learning journey that will immerse your students into the wonders of Howe Sound. This education kit was created from the diverse information and knowledge collected and presented in the OceanWatch 2017 and 2020 reports, which can be viewed here. This is the OceanWatch website, where you can learn more about Howe Sound and OceanWise's work within it. The reports can be downloaded here. The objective of this education kit is to immerse learners and educators into Howe Sound and foster an understanding of what species and habitats are there, how human activities impact this biodiversity, and what we can do to mitigate the effects of climate change. The components of this toolkit can be found at the bottom of the webpage. I will provide a brief overview of these components and then explore each document in depth. Feel free to skip through this video using the labeled timestamps. So the Curricular Connections resource is a short document outlining the connections between this education kit and the BC Provincial Curriculum for grade 7 and 8 students. The Unit Plan resource is a detailed document that contains all of the information necessary to guide the integration and planning of this education kit into your teaching practice. Next, the student workbook is a printable document that is designed to be distributed to your students. It contains instructions and resources for students to guide themselves through the activities in each lesson, as well as space for them to complete most activities directly in the workbook. Finally, the Educator Guidebook provides the background information, pedagogies, and lesson structure for educators to successfully guide students through their learnings about Howe Sound. So the first resource that we will dive into is the Curricular Connections document. This document describes the linkages between the content of this education kit and the big ideas, core and curricular competencies, as well as the content from the BC curriculum for both grade 7 and 8 learners. These curricular ties span the disciplines of science, English language arts, and social studies. While this toolkit is designed specifically to link with BC's grade 7 and 8 curriculums, many connections can be made with the content and big ideas from lower or higher grades. The second resource that we will dive into is the Unit Plan document. This document begins by compiling the curriculum connections outlined previously, but adds critical questions that will be explored throughout the 7 lessons that compose this kit. Below this section are lesson plans for each of the 7 lessons. Each lesson plan outlines the topic, objectives, activities, and necessary background information, the resources, and finally, assessment criteria for student work. The entire unit plan provides educators with an overview of the flow of the course and the content that will be covered, allowing you to plan out a timeline for the implementation of this education kit. The third resource that we will explore is a student workbook. This workbook will walk students through the activities connected to each lesson, providing them guidance, resources, and space to complete each activity in the workbook itself. Each lesson begins with an actionable goal that aims to encourage students to take small but meaningful actions in their daily lives and extend their impact outside of the learning environment. At the end of the workbook, there is the teacher rubric, which will help students to understand the expectations for the quality of their engagement and the deliverables that they will create. Finally, we will explore the Educator Guidebook. This resource contains all the relevant information and context to allow educators to confidently teach about Howe Sound's marine environment and guide students through activities that make up each lesson. So each lesson page includes background information relevant to the lesson, the critical questions discussed in the lesson, the formative assessments for the lesson, any materials or preparation needed, the objectives, and finally, include descriptions of the activities assigned in the student workbook. And this is copied for each of the 7 lessons included in this toolkit. In addition to the 7 lessons, there are appendices that include extension activities that can be added to enrich certain lessons. Also additional resources that can be explored by educators or students. A walkthrough of the Life Connections game, which is a fun 20-minute activity that can be introduced in person for large groups. And finally, a matching copy of the teacher rubric included in the student workbook, which will align the marking and evaluation with student expectations. To summarize, this educational toolkit contains 4 documents that are meant to be used together to guide both educators and students in a comprehensive and easy-to-use learning journey about diversity, ecology, culture, and threats to the Átl'ța7tsem Txwnéwu7ts Howe Sound region. We hope that you find these resources both useful and enjoyable. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback regarding this education kit, please feel free to reach out to online.learning@ocean.org.